Welcome to episode 2 of Reflective Practice. In this episode, there are basically 3 segments. The first segment consists of a discussion of where we left off in episode 1. If you recall, episode 1 was all about transforming a reluctant reader in just 6 days, when the principal of that school, during online classes on her virtual rounds, happened to take hold of an opportunity to carry out an instructional intervention for this reluctant reader who's a boy. And if you have seen that episode, you will know that we ended it with a set of questions on a reading which was connected to the topic of that day. Namely, it was a chapter from Helen Keller's autobiography, and it was a narrative of how Helen learned her first abstract word. So we begin this episode with a discussion first about Lalita, the name of the principal, her intervention, instructional intervention with that boy who was a reluctant reader. And then we go on to sharing a few post-it slips which teachers had posted online about their views regarding the reading of Helen Keller learning her first abstract word. Thereafter, we have an interesting case study shared by another principal, Vidya Nagaraj, about how their school encashed the opportunity of the pandemic and online classes to enroll parents into the education of their children, since classes were happening online and parents at home were anyway watching what was happening in the education of their children. So after that, there is a reading. Normally in all our sessions, we connect whatever is the theme to a reading that is relevant. So a research paper which synthesizes the findings of 41 papers about parental involvement in children's education is shared and briefly discussed. So welcome to this second episode of Reflective Practice. Yeah, Deepta has asked this question. Deepta, can you read it out?
Yeah. This was in response to the first part where, why did I think it worked?
Yeah.
But the question is, why didn't the subject teacher feel like trying out a way to make the child read without Lalita's intervention before that?
Yeah. So do you remember Ganga answered this question?
Yes, actually what Ganga said was the teacher was much more closer to the whole thing. And Lalita was a bit more farther away from the day-to-day dealing with the child. So when you're dealing every day with the child, you're very close. So then you will not actually see the issue also sometimes. Because
that idea won't strike you. The idea strikes you when you're a little away. I thought that was a very insightful observation she made.
Absolutely.
Which means your location, the chair you're sitting on a very involved chair as the parent or as the teacher. You're too close to the situation. Lalita was one step away. She was on her virtual rounds. She was one step away. So she was a little freer of that tight responsibility. So the idea struck her. The same teacher maybe would have had this idea for another colleague when it was not her student or when it was not her daughter, her son.
We usually do an activity, Nirja, for this. Okay. What we say is just hold your palm close to your face.
Yes.
What do you see?
Yes.
Hold your palm farther away from your face. What do you see? That is how it is.
Yes.
It's as simple as that.
Yeah, but it's simple in theory, but to detach yourself from that tangle is very difficult.
It is difficult, but that is what it is.
Yes, that is what it is. Absolutely. So I raised the question, what is it that a principal can do to help a teacher disengage from the issue? At least to this extent that they start seeing the bigger picture. An idea may strike them. Why is the teacher getting into that tangle? The teacher is feeling too damn responsible. There's too much of the teacher's identity entangled in it. It's the teacher's failure. if the child can't read. Which is why many times Lalita pointed out, the class teacher says, in my class it never happens, ma'am. You come and see, in my class it never happens. That's all part of, I'm okay, I'm doing my job, don't blame me, I'm okay. It's a sincere teacher. It's not that the teacher is being false. It's not that the teacher is trying to, in fact, she's too sincere. She's not able to see that it's not her fault. She just is too involved. She has to step a little away. And to step a little away, she needs that kind principal who says, look, I know you're a very good teacher. Relax. Let's both look at this together. So I think if that's the crux of the issue. If the teacher starts feeling the principal is on my side, it's not that the principal or the parent is my enemy, then they can both think of an idea. Is that making sense, Deepta? Since you raised that question.
Yes, yeah, thanks.
Similarly, we can also share things that we do in a staff meeting kind of a thing.
Yes.
That can also be a part of the system where, hey, these are the struggles that I have.
Absolutely.
And this is the way, like what we are doing here, exactly what we are doing here, if that can be built into as part of the school culture. Like the different suggestions that has come, I have tried this out, I have tried that out. And then ideas can come, and that can be built as the fabric of the culture of the space. That will also, many a times that has worked in our school also. In fact, some of the staff meetings, we actually have discussions about, hey, do you have similar issues? And this child is behaving like this in my classroom. Does he or she do that in your classroom as well? Or is it unique to my class? Or so those kind of discussions do happen, which kind of helps the newer teachers as well as older teachers getting ideas from the newer teachers. It doesn't mean only the old teachers have any new ideas. Sometimes newer teachers bring in such fresh perspectives to the whole thing. So it is always an exchange of ideas.
So to use staff meetings for something other than functional matters, that would be a great thing if one can do that. What struck me most was A, that Helen understood an abstract term like love. B, that it was compared to the clouds instead of the sun bursting out in its southern glory. And explains that you cannot touch the clouds. But you can, now she's talking of Anne Sullivan, not Anne Isaac. Anne explains that you cannot touch the clouds, but you can feel the rain and how glad the flowers and the thirsty earth feel after a hot day. And how similarly, you can't touch love, but you can feel the sweetness it pours into everything. How incredibly sensitive you have to be to bring in that analogy. If the teacher had been less sensitive, if she had been less patient, less committed, less purposeful, we would have lost an extraordinary tale of an extraordinary woman, an exceptional teacher. Swati, would you like to read what you've written?
I read this chapter in Hindi and English many times, so that I don't miss anything. I just love this chapter, Akka. I shared with one of my colleagues that this book should be kept as a Bible of teaching and learning. This book actually inspires me, also makes me feel so small for my teaching and learning practices. I felt I'm not doing enough. As a teacher, we often talk about difficulties we face in handling few children, and this shows me the mirror. Looking at Miss Sullivan's difficulty level, I think I need to work harder.
Nice. Thank you. Kulbir?
Yes. What enabled it? I feel it was the mutual trust between the teacher and the student. And secondly, the constant repetition and imitation of the words and conversation that the teacher had, that is Miss Anne Sullivan had with Helen Keller. That was the main, that was the crux of it all. So that is what enabled it. That is what made it happen.
Thank you, Kulbir.
Thank you.
Disha?
Yeah, the moment of exhilaration that the idea of having understood the concept of love struck me. I wish my students feel the same when I involve them in exploration of a certain idea. Needless to say, I will have to be equally thoughtful and patient as Anne Sullivan. The lines where she describes love are soulful. Answer 2, or there are many practices that a normal school does which would have prevented such a satisfaction on the part of the student, the perception of the child not being normal, and subsequent withdrawal of the teacher because they have to move on with the curriculum
Yes.
is also a situation.
Yes. A lot of you have pointed out the freedom from curriculum that Anne Sullivan and Helen enjoyed. So I can see the burden of the curriculum on all of us. Prabha?
A couple of things I would like to comment upon the week's sharings are the similarity between Lalita's intervention and Miss Sullivan's intervention for Helen.
Can you say a little more about that? I was struck by what was the similarity?
That I actually wrote in the other answer. Basically, that's why I didn't want to repeat myself. It is the consistency and the patience, the consistency and the repetitive nature of the work.
Okay.
That's what I wanted to bring, because both had it was consistent. There was not multiple mixed instructions,
Right.
and it was one thing and followed through again and again and again and again and again. There was no sagging in between. So I felt that similarity between the two. And the other one was, I think, a bit concerned about the label being attached to the child of being lazy. Maybe the intention was for the children to improve upon their own selves, but sometimes this also might become one of the labels they carry. Luckily, this child was able to get out of it, but there's always a chance that another child may not.
Okay. Very nice. Anything Lalita wants to say to that?
I agree with whatever was mentioned now, that the label that the teacher points out many a times is all 99% it is with the intention that the child will improve in that difficulty. But when it is commented in a classroom,
Yeah.
probably it takes it as a label. The child at that point of time, might say, but it is always looking at around. It's looking at what my friends might think about me.
Yeah.
Even friends also might forget. But it is the child who actually sticks to that word or that term. And then even though the child wants to do something to come out of its a difficulty or weakness, the child is not able to do. So I think we have to be very cautious.
Yes.
When we label anything, even if you say sarcastically, you're very smart, you're over smart. Next, the child, even this
is very dangerous. Yeah.
Even this happens, I've seen.
Yes. Because the word of the teacher carries so much power. So
Yes,
we have to be
we have
so careful that we don't abuse that power.
Exactly. Whether you praise
Yes.
or you commend, to appreciate your effort is. So we have to be very, very careful when we choose words.
Inviting Vidya. So before I invite, I must share with you. She phoned me one day when the pandemic started, and she said, I want to start something with parents, because parents are anyway getting involved with their children's education now that it's all online. So I want to start webinars for parents, and we want to do how to help your child read, how to help your child do blah, 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 blah. She told me a whole lot of stuff. So I listened to all that and I said, very nice. But I have one question. She said, what is that? I said, what is it that you as a school can learn from parents? There was dead silence at the other end. And suddenly she said, I never thought of it like that. And immediately she sat down to work on whatever she's going to share with you now. So that's Vidya for you. I mean, she's a sponge. She just absorbs. So go ahead, Vidya.
Thank you so much, Naruja. For that, it really gives me a lot of confidence to know that I'm in the right direction. Good evening, everyone. So I'm going to give you a bit of background on what I'm going to share. I work as a principal, a founder principal of a school which is called as Delhi World Public School. And so we have a very wide, spectrum of parents that we are catering to. Now, most of the parents have themselves gone through the traditional kind of education. So their expectation of school is that, we prepare them to score 90% and we teach them right from the first chapter till the last chapter, from first word to the last word is their expectation. Now, we already had worked enough with the parents in the first 2 years, trying to involve them with various school activities, and they have been involved. But when this COVID started, we were really impacted the most, because now when the entire online education started, we had parents who now had to become co-teachers and help their children. But most of our parents, majority of our parents, were absolutely clueless, and they were unprepared, and they were not in a state where they could help their children at home. So this was a kind of situation that we were in, and we were wondering, how do we help the parents continue to help the students and the teachers in the school and continue this entire education process? Was my biggest challenge as a principal at that point of time in June. So as teachers, we sat down and we prepared a list of ideas and concepts that we felt was important, and we decided to go ahead with that. Like how Niraja shared, so when I shared this, we had already done one particular session, and when I was discussing with her, she asked me a particular question, what are we as schools learning teacher from the parent community. So at that point of time, we really put a halt to whatever plan we had done, and we decided to have a feedback session from the parents. So we had asked them, how well do you know your child? What is it that you feel as schools we should know about your children? And what are the strengths of your children? And it was a beautiful session. We got a lot of information from the parents. Parents shared their feedback. So keeping those feedback in mind, we decided to plan this entire series of sessions on different topics. So how did we go about it? One, as I said, we definitely had our parents' support throughout, and we had done a need analysis in our own way. And all these sessions were done on Google Meet at no extra charges. It was done on Saturdays, and every single communication that went out was in bilingual, because as I said, we have a wide spectrum of parents. So we sent out the same communication in Kannada and in English. In fact, 7 out of 8 sessions that we've done so far has been in bilingual sessions. That means it was done in Kannada. It's a mix of Kannada and English that we have conducted these sessions in. And so far we've conducted about 8 sessions. And again, another thing that we've done is 5 out of these 8 sessions were conducted by our own teachers. So teachers have done these presentations for the parents. And some of the topics that we have done so far are strategies and techniques to study, because most of the parents believed in that rote method of learning. So we wanted to show them how you could use mind maps or concept maps, and what are the other different ways, how is it that we can learn, and then how to get your child to read. Again, most of the parents' idea was that it's only restricted to curriculum and school prescribed books. So how do we get them to understand the importance of reading beyond the school textbook? Then we had one on mind map skills. How do you make a mind map? And then writing issue, that was the biggest challenge. So we had a very elaborate session on writing issue. How do you equip our children to write? Then we also had one on hobbies and interest. That was one. We also had one on parenting skills. So these were some of the sessions that we planned. And every month we had 2 sessions on Saturdays where these sessions were conducted on Google Meet. One, the parents have now opened up and they have information to know how the school functions, what kind of teaching pedagogy we follow. They've also got to know the teachers. When the teachers have made these presentations, it has also helped them to understand from the teacher's point of view, and looking at their method of teaching, how do we take and handle a particular concept, whether it is writing skills or whether it is reading, how do we handle these issues? And parents have also started to take a lot of interest. We've seen the tremendous response where co-scholastic activities were concerned. Earlier, when we would have co-scholastic activities, the response from the parent community was very but it was very minimal. Children most often would come unprepared, or parents didn't understand why these activities were conducted. But now every single time when we have all this scholastic activities, we've seen tremendous response from the children, obviously supported by the parent body. That is something we have seen. Apart from that, we've also seen in instances where children were not doing well academically. And now the parents are spending quality time at home with them. And there has been a huge shift in their performance. We are able to see that there is a marginal improvement in their academic performance, and on the whole, there has been a good positive response. And also among the teachers. Now, when the teachers are presenting these sessions, when they are conducting this 1 hour or 1.5 hours of session, it's an opportunity, it's a platform for them to also grow as teachers, as leaders in various different capacities. And also many of these teachers, again, I have wide spectrum of teachers. Many of them have taken a sabbatical and come back, or many of them have come back from other schools, which are again very traditional kind of schooling and teaching that they've gone through. So when they came here again, many of the time, or most of the time, I would say that they would do certain things because it is imposed on them. As a school principal, when I say they have to do certain things, they do it, though I have explained to them many a time the reason behind it or the logic behind it. But when they sat through these sessions, for each of these sessions, it was mandatory that the teachers also attend. When they were attending, they were also attending as parents. Okay, so I mean, for their own children. Okay, so many of them came back and shared that now I'm able to identify certain problem that their own child had, and they were able to find solutions through these sessions. So that was a huge, I think now they do things with a lot more conviction. They know that it is whatever we've planned, there is a lot more thought process behind it. So now they are convinced about why they're doing certain things. So that is something that I've seen. And now the challenges that we have, turnout of parents has been between 25 to 40%. So at times we reach 40%, and at times there are, when we have just about 25% or 30%. That is one challenge that we still continue to face. And also, the most important thing is parents who really require this kind of support. We have, as I said, a wide spectrum of parents. There are some parents who would really benefit from this kind of program, but we are not able to get them to attend these programs. That's the challenge that we have. The ones who have understood the value of what we are offering, they have been very regular. Most of them, we have a set of parents who never miss a single session. But at the same time, we have this set of parents who have not attended a single session, though we send an audio, as I said, bilingual messages are sent out to reach to these parents and everything. But still, we are not able to get them to come and participate in these sessions. That's another challenge that we have. The third is to sustain the impact. Okay, right now when they sit through that, they have seen it and they know that what we are doing is wonderful. But how is it that as a school, we can see that converting is something that we still face as a challenge?
Q&A, please. Yes, you're getting lots of applause. So first, lots of applause and claps, as you can see. Any questions to her, please go right ahead. Yes, Prabha.
Okay. I mean, a fantastic program. Very impressed by what you have done. But one question that I have that I'm carrying from the beginning of your presentation about what you shared about their sharing about their children. So my question was, if it is a common space, okay, how were the parents sharing about their child's weaknesses and strength? Were they open about it?
In fact, Nirija ma'am was there for that particular session for, I think, half an hour or so. Again, we were really apprehensive how the parents are going to share. But the way we had worded it is, one, what do you think as teachers we should know about your child?
She started off by telling them, nobody knows your child better
than. Correct.
So can you help us to know your child a little better? We can never know your child the way you know your child. So can you please help us at least a little bit to know your child better? When she put it like that, they felt like they were the,
But we really had good responses from the parents, and we have documented the whole thing. Parents were really, they opened up and they did share.
I say that Vidya is a sponge, because when she phoned me, the first thing I said when there was dead silence when I asked that question, the first thing I said was, you may have parents who are carpenters and postmen and whatever, but when it comes to their child, every parent has done PhD on their child. You can't beat them. Okay, there's no matter what you do, you will not know the child as well as they do. So what are you going to learn from them? So she immediately used that. That's why she changed. The way she asked her question was Yeah, sorry. Who else raised their hand? Madhushri.
Your presentation is a perfect example for how school can be the center for community learning.
Absolutely. You hit the nail on the head. Absolutely.
Because it has such a positive impact not only on the students, on the parents, even on the teachers also. I think they are the main components of the school.
Absolutely. Shubhangi. Shubhangi, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question. I was wondering if, if you're doing something to involve parents who are not currently participating in your webinars.
That's a challenge I still have. Like I said, the way we are reaching out is one, even to through the children. 2 days, 3 days prior to the event, even the teachers start speaking about what is it that they're going to do in this particular upcoming webinar. And through the children, we hope to reach the parents. And in some of the junior classes, we know the parent is sitting next to the child in grade 1 or LKG, UKG. We know that the parent is sitting next to the child. So in those cases, our teachers have also spoken to them and asked them to come and, just be there and witness it.
As usual, I'll do my connect to literature. So I did my usual searching for a research paper which you could, connect to this topic. And I found a research paper, but it was, of course, from the West. So initially, I was a little skeptical. I thought, how is this going to help us? Our context is so different. But as I share with you the findings, I think you will agree with me that parents are parents everywhere. Children are children everywhere. There isn't that much of a difference. So I'm calling it enrolling parents, moving from versus to with. So what does research say? Firstly, the Teacher Plus article, which Vidya referred to. This presentation is in the folder which is being shared with all of you. So if you have the time, I request you to read it. And I also looked at this research paper, which is freely downloadable. You may not have time to read the whole paper, which is why I'm summarizing it here. This is a research paper which synthesizes information from 41 documents on different aspects of parent involvement. And it reflects the research on the effects of parent involvement on student achievement and other student outcomes. So what do they mean by student outcomes? Anything from general achievement to reading, math, other specific curricular areas, IQ scores, and an array of attitudinal and behavioral outcomes. So there are 41 documents, they must be spread across them. So what do they mean by parental involvement? This includes telephone and written homeschool communications. So in our context could be diary note also. Attending school functions. If a parent attends a function, they deem it as an involvement on the part of the parent. In America, they have this thing called classroom volunteers. Many parents volunteer to be classroom, in the classroom for some time. What we call parent-teacher meeting, they call parent-teacher conferences. Homework assistance, tutoring, what Vidya said now many of our parents are doing with the children. Home educational enrichment, again, like what Vidya said, they provide other books for children to read now, not just the textbooks. And parent involvement in decision-making and other aspects of school governance. So these are all what they called parental involvement. Now I'm going to ask you to take a guess. What do you think was the effect of parent involvement on student achievement? Do you think it was positive or negative?
Positive.
Absolutely. It's very predictable. Obviously, if the parent is involved, the student is going to do better. But here is a word of caution for Vidya. You're providing orientation and training. Don't do too much of it. A little is better than a lot. That's what research says. If you do too much of it, parents will start to feel this is very, too complicated for me. I think I better just stay away. Again, what do you think is the effect of parent involvement on student attitude and behavior?
Positive again.
Positive, obviously. Parents often begin their participation doubting that their involvement can make much difference. they're generally very gratified to discover what an important contribution they are able to make. In the middle school and secondary level, there was much more incidence of parent involvement in the preschool and primary. We must be also seeing that, no? And for obvious reasons, as the subject gets more and more complicated, parents feel they can't deal with it.
Yes.
Much. Preschool and primary children also are more dependent on the parents, and parents also feel the content is much easier. They can help. The role of parent involvement with disadvantaged students. Now there they did it with low income, often Black or Hispanic families. We can translate it to our context here. They found that these parents were often underrepresented. And I think that must be true in our schools also. These parents are underrepresented. Why? Because of lack of time or energy, because they do physical labor. So they're too tired to come to school for parent-teacher meetings. Or they're embarrassed or they're shy about their own lack of education, or they can't speak English. Or they don't understand all this structure, you know, about what's happening in school and the accepted communication channel. Or they think they are not welcome. They think the teachers and the principal are not really welcoming them. They're ashamed. Or they think there are some assumptions that the teachers and the administrators are making about their disinterest or inability. All these mental blocks make them less represented. But not surprisingly, they found that parents of disadvantaged and minority children can and do make a positive contribution to their children's achievement in school if they receive adequate training and encouragement in the types of parent involvement that can make a difference. Like any parent, their involvement does have a positive contribution. And in fact, disadvantaged children have the most to gain from parent involvement programs. So I don't think I've told you anything which came as a surprise. This is the one area of involving parents in school governance which is the most controversial. While parents would like to play a more active role, school heads and teachers, they are not willing to encourage parents to become partners. I think we can say that is true here also. They tend to feel that parents do not have enough training to take school decisions. But surveys of parents indicate that majority of parents feel they are capable of making these decisions. But this is something which has not been so extensively researched because there's not been enough of it. Anything anybody wants to say, ask? Yeah, Ganga.
Yeah, see, that's what, like, but again, I like to point it out to the very word awareness, not just what we speak, how we are. Because the children can, immediately see in which mood are we in and what are the emotions we go through. So the very word that comes out of us, can make a huge impact on the children. So unless we bring in that awareness as teachers and all the institution should work on, bringing this awareness within the teachers. That's what I feel. And the second one I like to also say is with children, it is like, it's like a sponge. They are like sponges. So whatever we see, it's not only impacting them, it is going and registering in them. Somewhere else, they may use the same approach with others. That is also there, right?
It's just like parenting, no? Children talk the way their parents talk. Yes.
Also, I'm just wondering, as a teacher, I'm wondering that how can a teacher be so conscious of her language? No matter how much mindful you become about.
I know, we can't be super human beings. Yeah, yes. I agree.
At the same time, it comes back to, being open and compassionate about your own vulnerability so that the student also, if he gets offended, if students get offended, they can, you're so approachable that they come to you, and tell you that, yes, this was something that you said and I got really offended by it.
Yeah. If that is there, then there's no problem. If that avenue is open, there's no problem. Yes.
I completely agree with Disha in that. Because time to go back to the children to say, hey, I think I was on the wrong when I did that. I was very angry at the time. Maybe when I'm not angry, we can have a different conversation about the same thing. I think those kind of things also help as a teacher community, because that is very important. So the child also, inadvertent, what the child learns is, yes, there are times when I get angry. That is a genuine feeling. And I have to see what I do when I am angry, and hence I can also go back and correct it.
Yes. Kritika, did you want to say something? You unmuted yourself and then.
Jaga, actually, I could connect to Vidya's presentation very well, because I'm also with a school which is very new. We're just into our second year, and we have a diverse parent base. So I could actually connect to each and every statement of hers. And actually, I just zoned off as I heard her, to be honest. And a lot is running in my head. Parent participation, what Deepta said sometimes, because we are also into the alternate stream where what is too much or what is less, how much is important. So I think, like you said, it is a trial and error that, every school kind of balances things. So there are pleasant situations, there are unpleasant situations in the process. Different kinds of, so I think today actually for me there's a lot that's going in, so probably I'll have to process, think, get all of it together, and probably it's too deep, I felt, and there's a lot that I could connect to.
So as you can see, there was a vibrant discussion about the engagement of parents with the education of their children, and how teachers can seek partnership with parents instead of the usual versus relationship which exists between parents and teachers, since both of them are, after all, pitching for the same goal, the growth of the child. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and we will come soon with episode 3.